Glasgow on fire early on in the cold of Scotsman. My name's Mark, let's talk rugby. Pretty interesting game overall, this one. We also had, not just Champions Cup coming back, but also the trial of some new laws. We had the one about if there's no contest in the line out, then crooked throw is okay. And we saw that happen a couple of times. 30 seconds for getting, the line out ready as well. That was nice too, because we've always seen teams kind of slowing down, in terms of getting to the line out and stuff. So it's nice to see that kind of sped up a little bit. Probably think, you could almost bring it down to even 20 seconds, but 30, working so good at the moment. I think 60 seconds for a kick as well. And then, some protections that were there for scrum half, I think gone as well. Overall, didn't have a huge impact on the game itself in terms of, giving one side an advantage over the other. Because both teams kind of, used up most of the 30 seconds, I think, for the lineouts anyway. But it was the big impact, I think, especially in the first half, was just the pace that Glasgow were playing at. And, they're right out of blocks very quickly. Statement of intent from them straight away. Tuipulotu goes marauding up the centre. And, looks like they're going to break into 22. Move breaks down, but it's actually a Racing 92 knock-on rather than Glasgow. So crucially, they have the scrum and they strike off the back of that scrum. Lovely hands, create a gap, and Horn is there to receive the pass when they get in behind. He goes over to score. His conversion then just about snuck over off the inside of the post for 7-0, but really well worked try there for Glasgow. And they remind me a little bit at the moment of Leinster from a few years ago, where just when they're running in midfield like that, the amount of options that are there for the ball carrier, and it was Racing found it really hard in terms of trying to set the defence properly, trying to pick out who's actually going to be the next ball carrier and stuff like that, and gaps were just opening up, and Glasgow had the hands, the skill, and the awareness as well to pick the right option and exploit that so many times in that first half. From there then, have a good carry from Habosi, gets Racing into the 22. So he was one of Racing's better players, especially until they kind of emptied their bench in the second half. And Sunderland, he's off feet, so Racing able to kick the penalty into the corner. They claimed the line out at the second attempt. The first time what they did was they kept the jumper up, rather than bring him down to ground, and referee, I think it was Carl Dixon, right, just told him, listen, don't do that anymore. Rather than penalising them for doing that, he just said, don't do it again. They were obviously trying to buy a penalty from an early shove from Glasgow before he came back to ground, but he wasn't buying that either. So we retake the line out and they claim it for them all, but Glasgow dealt with it really well. They get in there, disrupting, and then Racing really frustrated, that they couldn't make anything from that, actually give away a penalty and make it so easy for Glasgow to clear. Glasgow then looking dangerous in possession as they come forward again. Racing, though, is we have a little bit of back and forth between the teams here, because Racing then come forward on the counter, but they get into 22, the ball is stripped, and then Johnny Matthews actually makes a break out of Glasgow 22, looking to go the whole length of the pitch, but unfortunately didn't have the pace for it. But yeah, you can feel already games been played at a really high tempo, and that's suiting Glasgow. And, they talked about in commentary that Racing have to find a way to slow the Glasgow ball down. They weren't able to really do it. Jamie Dobie then On for Horn, who was off for an HIA, which he didn't pass, so he's actually on for the rest of the game. He combines well with Sutherland down the right and goes close, but Habosi did really well to tackle him into touch, but warning signs there again from Glasgow, that they're not that far away from adding extra scores to the opening try. He then does get in, actually, Dobie, that is, gets over a minute later. Matt Fagerson breaks up the middle, a bit of weak defending from Racing, and then Fagerson draws the cover. Dobie's there on the shoulder. He goes over to score in the corner. Nice kind of fend as he's gone over as well there. Conversion then hits the upright again, but this time it's the outside of it, so it doesn't go over. 12 points to nil. Glasgow then win a scrum free kick, which Dobie taps quickly. Jordan with lovely pass, and that allows them to get to that width quickly, and they really did kind of move it really, very well. Players out the back, that kind of stuff, but they got it to the width. They gave Cancellieri, all that space out there, and he's able to run it into the corner. Sometimes you can see teams when they're moving the ball, like it was intricate, but that intricacy sometimes can actually delay the ball getting out there, and then the drift means that the space isn't there when the ball actually arrives. But Glasgow, it was intricate, but they did it at pace, and the way they ran it as well meant that Racing couldn't drift as much as they maybe needed to, and just really well worked from Glasgow getting out there. Again, they hit the post of the conversion. It's 17 points to nil, and it feels like at that stage it's almost over as a contest. Obviously, a score can completely change the complexion of the game, but at that moment, you just feel that Glasgow, it's just a matter of time before they get themselves the bonus point try. Arundel then with a seatbelt tackle, and Glasgow go up the line into 22. Arundel was fairly quiet for Racing. Like, there's so many quality players in that Racing team, but when things aren't going well for you, the quality players, they don't get as much ball, they don't get it in as favorable position as they would like it to, and it can be kind of a difficult night for them. And I think for Arundel it probably was a bit of a difficult night for him. Then just crossing as Cancellieri cuts back inside, so that lets Racing then clear the danger for now, after Glasgow kind of moved it in around the 22. Racing then have a period of possession, but Glasgow defence just looks very comfortable, and eventually they manage to turn the ball over. Then Glasgow come again. It was actually Racing. They come again, working into 22. Some big carries from them. They're making decent meters, but it becomes a little bit scrappy from them. So I think it was Gibert. Lovely cross kick from him. Habosi claims it to go over. There was a bit of a hint of maybe, Tedder possibly obstructing Cancellieri in the air, but in the end, try stands. It's converted from out wide for 70 points to 7. And now you are thinking, like, if Racing can score next, it could get, a bit interesting there. But it's Glasgow who actually wrap up their bonus point try before half time. Dobie kicks a lovely 50-22 to then claim the line out from there, set up the maul, but move it immediately. Tuipulotu comes on a lovely line against the grain and just has the power to get himself within range of the line, and then he's able to stretch out to score. Conversion missed, and that's half time, 22 points to 7. Racing then start the second half. They let the ball bounce in their own 22 and finally just about scramble the ball clear, but it doesn't bode well for the second half for them, in terms of any kind of comeback, if that's the way that they're starting the half. Darge then gets over the ball, wins a penalty for Glasgow. They go up the line into 22. Matthews can't find Cummings in the line out, and Racing are able to clear. It's just one of those where he put it a little bit too high, and it was a fingertips, but Cummings couldn't quite gather it in. Glasgow then spend a prolonged period, carrying it into the 22, but then being repelled. Racing certainly more aggressive in defence in this half. And, they got some real impact from the bench. They brought on 6 of them at the same time, including, really, big names like Taufi Fanua and Daimani as well. Glasgow then, first half, they knew that the maul was kind of a weapon for them. Everybody knows that, right? But they use it very cleverly as a decoy in the first half for the most part. But this half, they've been kind of keeping the ball in there a little bit more. They've been getting, a bit of success. And that's where the next try comes from them. They claim a line out about 10 metres out, get a bit of momentum, backs pile in, and then over they go. Darge is the scorer. It's converted for 29 points to 7. And, any kind of idea of Racing coming back over the top of them, I think, is dead and buried. At that stage, Cummings then gets pinged for swimming up the side of a maul, and Racing get to kick the ball to the corner. They, they move it, and they're edging closer to the line, and they're, a few meters out, but then Darge gets over to win a penalty. There's a few, handbags after, because Darge, takes a bit of a late hit, clear out, after the penalty's already been awarded. But, Glasgow, you can see now after that the intensity begins to drop for them, and Racing starting to come into the game more. Tedder collects a grubber, he collected a grubber in behind, but just got completely swarmed by Warriors players, forced over the try line and also into touch, which meant that Glasgow were able to kick it clear. But again, a lot of the attack is coming from Racing at this stage. Mark Ferguson then, slaps the ball out of a ruck while he's on the ground, and it's right in front of referee Dixon. So he goes to the bin. Racing get another penalty shortly after that, which they tap, and then it was Buko, he drives over to score, and it was just power really from them getting over there. Converted for 29 points to 14. Racing then come again. They break, spring on the left. He puts in a kick. Looks like maybe it was the wrong decision initially, because the bounce completely beats him, but a teammate behind him collects it. Glasgow scramble well to, stop them actually scoring at that point, but then Racing eventually do work to the right, and Tedder goes over to score in the corner. Converts his miss, 29 points to 19. Racing now 4 minutes to get, a losing bonus point, and, a possible try bonus point as well, if they can get over that line again. So, coming from basically looking dead and buried to 2 points out of the game would have been brilliant from them. They do have the ball, 3 minutes into the red on the clock in a Glasgow 22, but they knock it on. Glasgow defence kind of stepping up the intensity a little bit more to force that error. Full time then 29 points to 19. So we're going to have a look at the stats first before we talk briefly about each team. So tries, first of all, 5 for Glasgow, 3 for Racing. Almost got themselves that bonus point at the end, but couldn't quite do it. Then in terms of the kicking success, 40% for Glasgow and 67% for Racing. But if there were points awarded for hitting the post, Glasgow could have had a few extra, in the bag as well. Onto attack then, meters made, 672 for Glasgow and 368 for Racing. Overall in the game, Glasgow definitely the better in terms of ball in hand. Carries 151 to 113. Clean breaks 21 to 11, and it just shows you how much that Racing defence tightened up in that second half, because Glasgow had 17 clean breaks in the first half. So, limited to 4 in that second half, but the damage was already done in that first half anyway. The Furnace beaten then 37 to 25. Again, it was very one-sided in the first half. I think Glasgow beat 25 or 26 in that first half to, maybe 10 or so for Racing. Offloads then 7-5. Most of the offloads came again in the first half. Passes 172 to 109. Possession 44% for Glasgow and 56 for Racing. But again, when Racing had the ball, in the first half especially, that defense was just too much of them, and it was a lot of kind of make a few meters, go back, try something else, kind of go side to side, and then eventually lose the ball. Had a bit more penetration in the second half, but again, you didn't really feel like they were going to rip Glasgow over. They really had to work for the points, whereas Glasgow were, they created the points very cleverly, and were so dangerous in that first half as well. In the second half, you can see why they kind of dropped off a little bit. It's very hard to keep that intensity up for a full 80 minutes. Territory then 46% to 54. But again, Glasgow much the more clinical team when they got their chances as well, when they got into that red zone. Tackles made then 145 to 114. Tackle success 84 for Glasgow is pretty decent. 72 for Racing. Again, a lot of that problems that they had there were certainly in the first half, where Glasgow just found holes, created holes, smashed holes, whatever. But there was holes everywhere in that Racing defence. Turnovers won then 10 to 7, and we don't have in this is the official Champions Cup website, so they don't have individual players, but I'm pretty sure Rory Darge would have been up there on the turnovers won for Glasgow. Set piece next then, lineouts 13, lineouts 1 to 15 for Glasgow. 81% success for Glasgow, 88 for Racing. Lineout steals then none each. Not a lot of pressure put on the lineouts. I think Glasgow did it a couple of times where they made it a bit scrappy for Racing, but for the most part, the lineouts were fairly clean. Scrums won then, 8 for Glasgow, 2 for Racing. Neither team really, dominant in terms of winning penalties or anything like that. And both, when they're using it as a platform, were able to get the ball out fairly cleanly. But I'd say Glasgow, in terms of, as a platform, certainly probably better for them. And then both 100% in the scrum as well. On to kicking then. Kicks from hand, 14 for Glasgow, 21 for Racing. Not really, a game where kicking had a big effect on it. Obviously, one of Racing's first try came from a cross kick, but in terms of contestable kicks and stuff like that, not a huge impact on the game. Kick meters then 359 to 460. So Racing getting the better of that, but again, the kicking didn't have a huge impact overall. Retained kicks then 4 to 6. So Racing coming out ahead on a stat that really didn't have that much effect overall in the game. Breakdowns then, Rooks won 92 to 123, and Rooks lost none for Glasgow and 3 for Racing. Rooks success 98% to 96. Turnovers won in Rooks and Maul 10 to 7. Maul totals then 5 for Glasgow and 5 for Racing, but Glasgow 100% in their mauls. Racing only 60%, and that's because Glasgow did really well getting in there and disrupting a couple of them. Then maul meters gained 5 meters to 3 meters, although I'm pretty sure the try that Glasgow scored made more than 5 meters, but maybe they went back in another one, I'm not too sure. Then onto discipline. Penalties conceded 10 points to 6, and then that 1 yellow card as well for Glasgow there in the last kind of 10 minutes or so of the game. Wasn't really a game where the kind of the whistle made a big difference in terms of the momentum in the game. Not many kind of controversial moments around that. There was maybe one where like the clear out on Darge, maybe, a few more replays and stuff, you might have seen some kind of card given for that. But other than that, not too much there. So let's talk about each of the teams. We're going to start with Glasgow. So into the knockout stages now, which is brilliant. That's where we want to see them, as a URC fan, and as a fan who, obviously I'm a Leinster fan, but I really like Glasgow. I like the style of play, and I like the fact that the progression they've made over the last few years as well. It kind of reminds me of the way Leinster were when I started going to Leinster games. First of all, we were down in Donnybrook, like it was a tiny little stadium, and we were hugely in the shadow of Munster at the time, and everything just built up over the years, just steady improvement, and then you could see the players were there, and then they had to get the mental side of the thing, right, kind of get to that first semi-final, get to the first final or wherever, and then start lifting trophies after that. And that's where Glasgow are now on their, progressing as well. So I'm really enjoying how well, they're coming on at the minute. I really, would have loved if they had, pulled off the win in the last round, to be going now 3 from 3 and have a chance, at, a real top seeding going into to knockout stages. But overall in this one, looked really slick in that first half. They did drop off in the last 20 minutes, which they're not going to be able to do as much once they progress into the knockout stages. The centres then, Jones, but especially Tuipulotu, looked very dangerous. Darge was excellent, as was both of the Fergusons as well. I thought Cummings had a good game too. There was lots of really good performers. Kyle Stain as well out there on the wing. And then, Jordan at 10, a real pity that they're going to lose him at the end of the season. It feels like, if they could have retained him, what you don't want to happen is a winning team like this being kind of pulled apart and broken up. So hopefully that doesn't happen to him. Hopefully he's the only kind of big name that leaves at the end of the season. But, there's talk of, Glasgow being contenders this year in this competition. Honestly, I have to give how I feel right now is that I'm not sure about that yet. And the reason for it, again, a lot of my stuff is related to Ireland or Irish rugby. And for me, it's like Ireland and Rugby World Cup, right? For me, when I think about people talking about Ireland being contenders to win the World Cup and etc., my thinking is, first of all, get to a semi-final and then we'll talk about it. And that's how I feel with Glasgow and this competition as well. They've never been to a semi-final, and that is a big step for a team. Getting to quarterfinals is great, but generally, if you're getting to quarterfinals at the level where Glasgow are now, you're normally away in your quarterfinal, or you're kind of at home, but you're against one of the big teams that has maybe, come into the knockout stages and has started to turn things up. And, let's say, some years you might have had teams who were at home in the quarterfinal, but they got somebody like Toulouse or Munster of old, or Saracens when, they were a dominant force coming at you and you don't deliver, right? So for me, for Glasgow, it's about getting to that semi-final, and then we can really look at them as being contenders in this, because I feel like it's the same with, other teams who haven't been to that level before, the likes of Bordeaux as well. Bordeaux have been fantastic in the pool stage and stuff, but until they reach a semi-final, you can't really talk about them as contenders. Whereas we look at teams like, especially, like Leinster a little bit lower, but especially Toulouse and La Rochelle as well. Those teams you can talk about as being contenders, especially, once we see who's going to win between Leinster and La Rochelle, we can see who of those two is going to be the big contender, right? That they're teams that in recent years have been to the final. La Rochelle have won 2 of the last 3. Toulouse, defending champions. Those teams you can say they're contenders because in recent years they've done that. They've made semi-finals, they made finals, they lifted the trophy. So that's where Glasgow need to get to, I feel, to really be considered contenders. And if they can do that this season, then when you go to next season, even if they lose the semi-final, right, when you go to next season, then you can, at this stage of the competition, then start talking about them as being contenders because they've been there, they've done that, they've made a semi-final, and, they can make that step then, make another semi-final, make a final, and then it's, the chances there to actually lift the trophy. In terms of Glasgow themselves, the question is, do they have the players, the skill, the ability to win this competition? Absolutely. I don't doubt that for a second. But you would have said the same thing about them in the last number of years in the URC as well. They had the style, they had the ability, they had the players, but they weren't able to make that breakthrough until they did make the breakthrough last year, getting to the final and then fantastic performance to win it as well. And that's what it is. It's being able to make that step to get to that level. They're not quite there yet. It doesn't mean they can't do it this season. It's just that they haven't done it before. And again, you would have said the same about them in the Challenge Cup final in 2023, but they really didn't do themselves justice in that final when they lost to Toulon. And and that, I'd say, for a lot of these players, that would be a big regret for them because it felt like that was a trophy that they certainly had the ability to win, the potential to win it, but they weren't able to deliver. From here, I feel like they've got to get that job done next week now. Go to Quins and get that win. Don't kind of, after 2 great home performances, don't kind of spoil it now by losing the last pool game and just kind of falling into the knockout stages and then getting a tougher draw than maybe their performance, certainly their home performances would justify, So hopefully they do that, they go there, they win against Quins, and then, give themselves the best chance of actually making that semi-final as well. I really hope that they can do it this year as well. I'd love to see them doing that. On to Racing then, very poor in that first half. Defense, very passive, too many gaps. Their attack was blunt. The bench really did give them a boost. And then also kind of coincided with Glasgow kind of dropping off a little bit as well. So then, it had kind of a double impact for them too. They almost got 2 bonus points that they really didn't deserve over the performance, from the first 60 minutes or so. In commentary, it was weird because they talked about them as being like a big team in this competition. But I don't really see them like that, honestly. Like, I know in terms of you look at the star-studded players they have, you look at the coaching team, but they haven't done it in this competition, in recent years. And, like last year, the last few years, going at the pool stages or early in the knockout stages or stuff like that, not really backing up that kind of claim of them of being, a massive club in this particular competition. Especially when you think of French teams in this competition, you look at the teams that are there and you say like Toulouse, La Rochelle, in recent years, massive teams in this competition. Bordeaux, a coming team in this competition as well. Toulon, a team that have done it previously and potentially this year could do it again, could reach those heights as well. But Racing, for me, they're not in that category with those guys. So I think Glasgow, not Glasgow. I don't want to kind of misspeak here. The commentary team kind of built them up a little bit too much. And I feel like when you look at these two teams at the moment, like Glasgow in recent years in this competition would have been at the level where Racing are at the minute, but it feels like Glasgow have taken a step up from there. So they really, they shouldn't be comparing themselves to Racing, I feel, unless Racing, Racing started off with a fantastic win against Quins, but didn't back it up away from home. So, I wouldn't put them again in the same bracket as a Toulouse or a La Rochelle or even a Bordeaux at the minute. And then talking about Racing as well, there's plenty of rumours about, Stuart Lancaster's future there as well. And, what's going to happen with that. And, personally, I'd love to see him come back to Ireland and maybe, go to Munster now, who are looking for a new head coach. I think that would be a brilliant fit. Stuart Lancaster, from his time with Leinster, he's well liked, here in Ireland. And, I think he'd be fantastic for Munster as well, especially given the fact that Munster have kind of evolved their style of play, under Graham Rowntree as well, being, more of a, more of a kind of not backs dominated, but certainly more of an all court kind of team, similar to the way Glasgow are as well. And, I think he really would help them out there. And if Racing don't want them, then, we want them over here in Ireland. But yeah, Racing, again, in terms of their, their potential and their performance in this competition, they're just poles apart, really. And again, I don't think Glasgow should be comparing themselves to that. I think Glasgow have kind of progressed a bit more than that, and they should be setting their sights higher. Now, whether they can perform that or not is going to be up to them in the knockout stages. But I think it starts next week, as I said, against Quins. But that's as much as we're going to talk about for this one. Let me know, your thoughts down in the comments.